Go ahead and play with my heart now, darling. Do whatever you want to do. Go ahead and play with my heart now, darling. Do whatever you want to do. Keep on playing with my heart now, darling. Don't want to have nothing to do with you.
So how old were you when you started playing, Tom?
I was about 11, 12 when I picked up guitar, and like every every young kid with an attention span of nothing, after about a month, I, went under the bed and I didn't touch it for probably a year or two, and then I broke my index finger. I don't even remember which one, but when I was when I was recovering, I was like, oh, let's give this guitar another shot. And being left-handed, it was a right-handed guitar, so I didn't know that the bass strings are supposed to be on top. And I was trying to bend strings with the bass strings. I'm like, oh, this is not going to work. And then and then I had seen, somebody was like, well, you've got them upside down. So we switched them around and then just started learning to play, strung left-handed. And by the time I was 15 or 16, I was starting to sneak into like the checkerboard, a couple of other places on the south side. But, I mostly went to the checkerboard because they never checked IDs down there.
Okay.
And I always brought a guitar with me. I mean, I didn't play anything for probably the first 3 months I went down there. I was just, absorbing it.
One minute you say you want me, the next minute you say you don't.
And when I started taking lessons, my dad had a vast record collection of jazz, blues, and R&B and rock, and a little bit of everything. But he mostly listened to R&B and blues and jazz, so that unknowingly I had been hearing that my whole life. And when I started playing guitar, that's what I want. I ended up gravitating to that right away.
So
The next minute you say you don't.
when did you get into your first band? How old were you?
I started doing little pickup gigs with LV Banks when I was like 18, I think. 18 or 19. And then playing with LV, I was doing, little clubs on the south side, for no money. And, I was 18, 19 years old. I was just happy to be anywhere.
Start paying your dues right there.
Oh yeah, and after maybe a couple months of doing that, he would hire me on the gigs that his regular guitar player didn't want to do because there was no money. And again, I didn't know any better, so I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so after a while of that, then I started, when I was hanging out at the checkerboard, I was hanging around John Primer a lot and Magic Slim and those guys. And so after a while of hanging out watching John, I finally got the nerve to say, "Hey man, I can play some if you want me to play some." And so he'd let me sit in, and after about 3 months of sitting in with him, LV had kind of stopped doing the no paying gigs. So John, then John called me, or I was hanging out one night at the checkerboard with them, and I think his harp player was out of town, and he needed another piece, and he was like, "Hey, can you do this gig on a Thursday?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay, we're gonna meet at the checkerboard and drive out to the gig." And the gig was in, I think, Downers Grove. So we all meet at the checkerboard and get in John's van to go drive out there. And of course we get lost. Melvin knows all about being on the road with John. So we end up, the first gig I'm on, you know, I go meet John down at the checkerboard. We end up being an hour and a half late because he got lost. This is before, GPS and, all of that. It was, you had your road map, you looked at it, and John had it upside down. And so we end up getting to the gig an hour and a half late. And, we do the first set. And after the first set, John was like, "You actually know you actually halfway know what you're doing." I said, "Yeah, I've been watching you a lot, you know." And, he was like, "Well, how?" He's like, "Well, look, until my harp player gets back, you know, what's it going to take for me to have you in the band?" And I was like, "Well, I don't drink, I don't do any drugs, and I show up on time, so as long as you're willing to pay me, I'm willing to show up."
There you go.
And, and that started the snowball down the mountain, as they say.
So then,
When you realize what you've lost, darling, be you that done paid the cost.
I ended up playing with Byther Smith for about a year after that. And so and then when I was playing with Byther, James Cotton needed a guitar player. He had Rico McFarlane was playing guitar. Him and Slam Allen were on guitar with James. And Rico was going out. He went out on tour with Lucky Peterson for a month. And so Cotton's manager called me and he was like, "We've been doing some research and everyone says you're the guy we need to talk to." And he's like, "We've got a month tour out on the West Coast and want to know if you can do it." And I was like, "Yes." And I was actually in New York City with my wife at the time, visiting a friend of hers, and it was Halloween. And so I'm in the middle of Times Square, on my giant cell phone. "I can't hear you. Hold on. Let me go into this building. And so, they're like, "Well," and I'm like, "Okay, when are we leaving?" "November 2nd at midnight." So, "Okay. I'll call you tomorrow and get your address and then we'll see you on the 2nd at midnight." Okay. I got back from New York City on that little vacation. I got back from that vacation on at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. November 2nd, and by midnight that night I jumped in a van and was driving to California with Cotton's band. And his manager, as we were driving out there, he's playing all of James's CDs and, you need to listen to this, and so I'm like, I know all of his stuff already.
yeah.
I'm like, it'll be fine. And, halfway across the country, he's like, "I have a question. You didn't even ask how much you're making on this." And I said, when James Cotton calls, you don't say no. You just say yes and figure it out as you go along. And so, so I ended up going out for a month with them. And then when we got back, I think Rico had already agreed to go play with Lucky. So they needed a guitar player, and they were like, well, you worked out really well. You want a gig? And so I ended up playing with James for 12 years. It was the longest pickup gig I've ever had.
Thank y'all so much. See you soon.